The footage in this video doesn't contain any major area, item, or story spoilers whatsoever, so don't worry about watching this if you haven't beaten Tears of the Kingdom yet. Also, please don't talk about spoilers in the comments, partly because I haven't beaten the game myself yet. This video is going to be a sort of follow-up to my previous video about graphic design in Breath of the Wild, where I went into detail about the techniques the designers used to create a simple and uncluttered user interface. This time, however, since a lot of the techniques and graphic elements that I mentioned in that video are extremely similar if not the exact same in Tears of the Kingdom, I'm going to be taking a look at the little differences in user interface, menus, and style between the two games. And talk about my best guess as to why the change was made, because at the end of the day, who knows what the hell they were cooking. Normally I'd have much broader things to focus on, but this one's going to be a bit all over the place in terms of how big or small a change I talk about really is. If I notice it with my eyeballs, it's going into the video. I completely understand how people could confuse footage from the two video games at first glance. The heads-up displays are, as you can see, extremely similar in visual design. But you know, in graphic design it's the little bit of stupid stuff that matters. Starting at the top left area of the screen, the D-pad quick selector thingy-majingy has been moved down. The D-pad icon itself has been compacted and cleaned up a little, and the runes shortcut on the D-pad up has been replaced with a shortcut for dropping and throwing different materials from your inventory, represented by an apple icon, which logically is the same one used in the materials page of the inventory. You might not have noticed it, but all these icons in both the heads-up display and inventory menu have been updated to a slightly more interesting look, with sharper edges and more dynamic little bits that give each icon a little more personality. But you know, this game's style is still clean and minimalist, so personality is stretched a little bit thin here. When it comes to the runes, they've been separated from this D-pad preview, and their icons have been enlarged by about 3 times the size that they were in Breath of the Wild. The icons for the different runes are therefore quite a bit more detailed than they were in the first game, all of them sporting a much more worn textured look which makes them appear more ancient in nature. Which is nice because they match the aesthetic of the old Zonai ruins I am Dmitri Alexander Blaithit, Prince of the Holy Kingdom of Fargus Rauru. Alongside these new icons is a tiny little icon for the L button, signifying to the player that changing runes has now been confined to the same button as using them. In terms of gameplay, this definitely feels confusing at first, as tapping the button uses the rune, but holding it down opens a dumb little wheel, which you use to pick between the 8 different runes. So 8, sorry, I meant 7, 6, maybe 5, honestly fucking 4 runes. The selector wheel itself is very simple in design, but I have a couple qualms with the way it looks. Mostly in how they decided to keep clean, modern-looking icons for the camera and map, and I guess amiibo. I think having that visual consistently of the warm runic icons the whole way around would have helped a lot in making the wheel feel more immersive or diegetic. I mean, the camera icon literally just looks like a modern camera, which I guess is nice from a player's standpoint of immediately being familiar with what the icon means. But I think they definitely could have made an effort to promote immersion by making it look a little bit more in line with how the Puripad looks. Believe it or not, there was also a change made to the health bar as well, but my sources for this one are just my own footage and Zack Scott games, but I'm pretty sure that Tears of the Kingdom opts for a brighter and warmer shade of red in comparison to Breath of the Wild, which I have to believe was a change made as the designers thought it would help create a better contrast between the HUD and the game behind it. Moving on to the bottom right corner of the screen, this is the section that contains all the information which Link only gains thanks to the Puripad. And there have been some slight changes to the HUD elements here. The thermometer display has had a humongous, gargantuan overhaul, where they use thicker lines and more negative space to make it considerably easier to read at a glance. And the weather/time display has been cleaned up a little bit, opting for a cleaner white instead of the chicer blue from the first game. The type used to display the time is also not italicized anymore. Neat. And at the bottom of the minimap, the game now displays Link's X, Y, and Z coordinates, which is nice I guess, but I personally have never looked at them once, or used them at all in gameplay. Tears of the Kingdom also introduces a new conditional UI element in the form of the energy meter. As I explained in my previous video, conditional UI elements are parts of a heads-up display or user interface, which only appear under certain conditions. Or in this case, whenever Link is using up energy. Oh, why do wings run out of power? That's so dumb.
I know.
Wait. The design in itself is pretty simple. When Link is using up battery power, an overlay showing how many energy wells he has in his energy cell appears. Horrifically dumb names, Nintendo. And whichever energy well is currently being used up is enlarged so that it's easier for the player to notice. Its design is definitely not as compact or clean as the stamina wheel. It's a little clunky in shape and honestly looks a little stupid. But in practical use, it's very easy to understand what it means, so it works. With that, I think that was most of the changes made to the in-game heads-up display and UI. But now's the time to get to the meat and potatoes of the changes. The menus. Just like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom's menus are split up into 3 different menus. The title screen, the inventory, and the Pure Pad. All of which have had some changes made to them. Let's start with the inventory. This menu is the one that's had one of the biggest overhauls. In my opinion, the new look it has in Tears of the Kingdom is miles better than the one in Breath of the Wild. And that's for basically one reason. This menu feels like it actually has a sense of identity. Like it has a style and look that it's going for, unlike Breath of the Wild's, which was clean and organized, but felt as default as an inventory menu could look. Now don't get me wrong, this isn't some Persona fucking 5. Tears of the Kingdom still sports a very modern and minimalist visual style. But I think it strikes a decent balance thanks to the runic patterns seen in a lot of different places. Notably near the bottom of the menu here. I also love how the pattern here connects to the white box and the item description box, which looks super nice. And instead of opting for just a black translucent background, the menu here uses a mix of white and black boxes of varying opacities to display its menus. The icons at the top have almost all been touched up or edited in some way, but on top of that, the way you browse these menus has been updated. You no longer have to scroll through 10 pages of food and materials to get from your key items to your shields. Instead, they rearrange these slots to an infinitely long vertical layout, so you can switch between each tab with only a single button press, which is miles better for efficiency reasons, but also these different tabs and icons just look super clean, which is great. Also, Link's health has been moved to the right to be next to the rest of his other stats, which makes way more sense, and gives the inventory pages way more room to breathe. Next up, the Pure Pad menus, which has 5 different tabs within. The map, the adventure log, the album, the compendium, and the character profiles. When it comes to the map, my main complaint about the first game's map is that it tried to resemble the old runic design of the Sheikah Slate, which led them to add these awesome lumps of shit in the corners. This time around they replaced the turds with rounded stone shapes, which sport their own circular patterns within. While these shapes are probably not very nice for someone with trypophobia, it's definitely an improvement on the old ones and a decent attempt at making a diegetic menu interface. The adventure log has been moved from the plus menu to the minus menu, which is a welcome change as it always felt way more in line with the information that would be displayed on the Sheikah Slate or Pure Pad, but it also received a decent overhaul in presentation. Nothing too crazy, but it rearranged the tabs, moved them to the left side and introduced the new Side Adventures tab. Of course, it also redesigned everything to look consistent between the different pages in the minus menu. These all share a dark blue screen-like appearance among them, with additional runic and hieroglyphic patterns to assist in creating the diegetic style. The character page is an extremely welcome addition. I love getting a chance to look at all the awesome artwork and read about all these characters, but in terms of design, I really appreciate how each character is assigned a people group that they work for or originate from, and each of these groups has a different logo to represent it. For example, the Hylians have the classic Hylian Triforce logo, while the Sheikah affiliate people instead have the Sheikah logo behind them. Before we wrap up with the title screen menu, I want to take a quick look at the design of the loading screen here, which I think is far more interesting than its counterpart in Breath of the Wild. The introduction of the golden brown color is far more pleasing to look at than the harsh black and white of the first game, and the patterns scattered about that derive from the look of Link's right arm are great. I also like how they reuse the map on this screen, as it's nice to give the player some more stuff to look at while they wait for their fast travel. Finally, we can take a look at the title screen. Oh boy, I sure do hope the title screen fixed the problems I had with the one from Breath of the Wild. Surely it's not as lifeless and boring as the old one was, right? Oh man. Somehow this one feels even worse to me. The brown ruins in the background feel even more dead than the slideshow of artwork from the first game. And while I do really like the logo and color scheme here, with the bright turquoise allowing for some nice contrast and identity, it all feels very redundant when paired with the lack of music once again. Here's my quick attempt at what something more interesting would have looked like in my eyes. And thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you're enjoying Tears of the Kingdom, I for sure am, and I hope you enjoyed this little ramble. Please consider clicking the YouTube buttons below if you enjoyed it. Alrighty, take it easy.